Welcome back, students, to Data Analysis Module 6, Lesson 1, Reading and Interpreting Pie Charts. Calculators are allowed. Okay, we have learned many ways of using graphs and charts to help illustrate data. These included tables, bar graphs, line graphs, and so on. In this topic, we are going to look at how we can use a circle graph to summarize and present information. This is known as a pie chart, where the entire pie represents a whole, pretty much a whole pie. You're just going to be basing data on that. There are three objectives to this lesson. Objective number 1, using pie charts to display quantities. Objective number 2, using pie charts to display fractions. And thirdly, using pie charts to display percentages. Some of the topics that you may have to revisit: fractions and percentage. These two you may have to revisit, even though I totally believe that you know all this information already. One important thing to remember when tackling pie charts or any other kind of graph is to read the information given before jumping into answering the questions. Read the information given. Let me repeat that, okay? Read the information given. Sometimes extra information is provided there that cannot be found in the graph itself. All right then, here we go. Alright students, welcome to question 1. Let's read the question. The following pie chart shows how a class of pupils fared in a mathematics test. All the information is given in the pie chart. Part A of the question is this: how many pupils are there in the class altogether? Part B, what fraction of the class failed the test? Since the whole pie represents the total number, we just have to add all the values up to find the total number of pupils in the class. Okay, that is step 1. Let's add all the figures up. Girls who passed is 13, girls who failed 2, boys who passed 12, boys who failed 3. Add all the figures up and you get the final answer for part A, which is 30. Now let's move on to step 2 and part B of the question. First, we look for the number of pupils who failed the test and express it as a fraction of the total number of pupils. Tell me the number of pupils who failed the test. Girls 2, boys 3. You add both of them up and you get 5. Express that as a fraction of the total number of pupils and you get 5 over 30. When you simplify that by dividing both numbers by 5, you get 1 over 6. And that is your final answer for part B. And 30 is your final answer for part A. Alright students, moving on to question 2. The following pie chart shows the favorite colors of a group of 80 children. Look at the pie chart for the information that is given. Part A of the question is this: how many more children like blue than green? Part B: how many children like red? Since the entire pie represents one whole, we can find out how many children like green and blue before finding the difference in number. You can automatically see that there's slightly more blue compared to green looking at the pie chart, right? So let's look at step 1. Let's calculate the number of students who like green. Step 1, green. Okay, let's write down green and then just draw an arrow over there. And what do you see? 1/4 of the students like green. 1/4 multiplied by 80. When you do the mathematics, you realize that you get the answer is 20. Let's do the same for blue. Blue. And what is the fraction over there? Is 3 over 10. 3 over 10 multiplied by 80. Do the math, you get 24. Now let's do a blue minus green, because you want to find out how many more children like blue than green. So it's 24 minus 20, and the answer is 4. And that is your answer for part A of the question. Moving on to part B. Now we can easily find out how many children like red, because you have technically found out the other two figures already. So step 2, 80, that's the total number of children, minus 20, 20 of them like green, minus 24, 24 like blue. What is the remainder? When you do the mathematics, you get the answer is 36. 36 of them love red. And that is your final answer for part B. And for part A, you have 4. Always underline the final answers. It's a way of checking it. Okay, moving on to question 3. The following pie chart shows the type of fishes in a tropical freshwater tank. Once again, information is given on the pie chart. The types of fishes you have are mollies, goldfish, angelfish, and guppies. This is part A of the question. What fraction of the tank is made up of mollies? Part B of the question is this. How many fish are there in the tank altogether? Okay, you can see in the figures there are a combination of whole numbers and percentage. However, part A of the question asks you for a fraction. So we know that the pie represents one whole, which also equals to 100%. So now we can find the percentage and thus the fraction that is made up of mollies. Let's first find out the percentage that is made up of mollies, okay? So you take 100 minus the rest of the figures except mollies, 25% minus 15% minus 40%, and the remainder you get is 20%. That is the percentage of mollies you have. So when you express this as a fraction, you write it as 20 over 100. 20 over 100, when simplified, you get the answer you get is 1/5. Okay, moving on to step 2. Since we now know that 12 mollies make up 1/5 of the fish in the tank, we can find the total number of fish. Okay, step 2. 1/5 of the tank is made up of mollies. So 1/5 is equals to 12. So 1 unit is equals to 12 fishes. What about 5 units? 5 units is 12 multiplied by 5. And the answer you get is 60. Total of 60 fishes in the freshwater tank. And that is your final answer. Part A is 1/5. And we are done with question 3 and lesson 1. Alright students, we have successfully completed data analysis lesson 1. Attempt the quiz, keep track of your scores, and of course, as always, go score.